We're spending the month of June in the village of Taoyu Dao. In English, this means Big Fish Village. 5,500 people live here. The village has 263 boats, used for both coastal and deep-sea fishing. The province of Shantung is a quarter of the size of the state of Texas, and it has 64 million inhabitants. Its shores stretch for more than 1,000 miles. Shantung lies between northern and southern China. It is also the birthplace of Confucius. They catch shrimp, lobster, and crab. They also catch the long and shiny red snakefish. These are salted, dried, and sent to nearby cities, or even as far as Peking. For 3 or 4 yuans a month, you can rent a house. You can buy one for 800 yuans, which is about the average annual salary. The village hostel, where we lived, has several rooms opening onto a courtyard. It is reserved for travelers, free of charge. We tend to think of China as a huge expanse of land, forgetting that it has over 10,000 miles of seacoast. For more than 100 years, foreign invaders came to China by sea. In 1899, Shantung province was invaded and it rebelled. This was the first anti-colonialist insurrection, the Boxer Rebellion. The major countries of Europe, as well as Japan and the United States, formed a military expedition to crush the rebellion. Peking was burned, and more than 1 million lives were lost. Today, this sea belongs to a free people, liberated in their work and in their struggles. All boats are owned collectively by the brigade. Once a year, they hold a meeting to decide whether they need to buy new boats from the state. Fishermen do not sell their catch privately. Everything is sold to the state. A few years ago, the fishermen were paid according to a quota system. Those who caught less than a certain amount had their salaries docked. Those who caught more received bonuses. On the whole, the community was poor and stagnating except for a few rich individuals. During the Cultural Revolution, the village went through a major upheaval. The brigade's leadership was changed. Today, the fishermen are paid according to a system of work points they have established themselves. Everyone earns between 600 and 750 yuans a year. All the side industries related to fishing can be found in this village, like this nylon net weaving shop. But the community brigade does not want to depend entirely on the sea for its livelihood. The neighboring hills have been cleared for planting corn, wheat, and vegetables. Women hold up half of the sky. Whatever men can do, women can do. Now women fish on the high seas. Things have certainly changed here in the native province of Confucius, who said, "A door to the backyard is not a real door. A woman is not a human being." This crew, made up almost entirely of women, is not unique. Women are working like this all over China. The women call themselves the March 8th crew. On March 8, 1857, one of the first demonstrations by women workers took place in the United States. It was organized by women in the textile industry. March 8th is International Women's Day.
Have they been working as sailors for a long time? It's been 3 years. Do you like this kind of work? Yes. And the others? We do too. What did you do before? All sorts of things.
Qu'est-ce que vous faisiez exactement avant d'être marin?
What sort of things exactly? A lot of us wove fishing nets. I used to raise sable on a farm.
Et toi?
And you? I wove nets.
Et toi?
And you? I grew algae. I worked on land. It's harder at sea. But we're not afraid.
Vous êtes fiers d'être marin?
Are you proud to be sailors? Yes, we're very proud.
Vous êtes beaucoup dans
How many are you? 19.
Mais il y en aurait beaucoup plus qui voudraient faire ce métier?
Are there many others who would like to do this kind of work? Yes, a lot.
Vous avez dû lutter contre votre père?
Did you have to oppose your father? My father was against it at first. Even some men refused to do this work. So why should you do it, he said. I want to try. If a man can do it, so can a woman. I overcame the conservative ideas of my parents. To convince my parents, I compared the old society with the new. Before, if a woman stepped on a net strung out on the beach, the net would be abandoned. It was a feudal custom. We got together to talk about our idea of going to sea. Then, we brought it up at a meeting of the party unit. They decided to let 4 of us try out on board. The whole village was talking about it. People became very interested. They asked us if we got seasick. When they realized that we were up to it, everybody was pleased. When we came back to land the first time, everybody asked us, well, did you get seasick? When we said no, they were happy. You're terrific. Actually, we did get seasick on board, but the villagers had given us remedies against seasickness. They encouraged us to stick to it. It's easier now. Do you think you can really manage a boat without men on board? Yes, we're sure we can. You would like to make it alone, or do you think it's really possible? We're determined. Do you think you'll still be able to go out to sea when you're married and have children? We'll go to sea if necessary. I've never thought about it. Me neither. Goodbye. Our studies helped us to understand the importance of birth control, and we were the first to practice it. Then we formed this group to get the information around to everyone else. We try to stress the importance of birth control in our family planning program. We give out information concerning the use of contraceptives. For example, the IUD and the pill. and also about abortions in some cases. Our main reason for family planning is not overpopulation. We practice it to maintain the health of the mother and child and to fully liberate women. Having a lot of children is not prohibited. Is the pill free? Yes, it's distributed free by the state.
Est-ce qu'on pratique l'avortement?
Are abortions available? Yes, but only if requested. We don't recommend it.
C'est gratuit?
Is it free? Yes. We still run into obstacles, not only from women, but from young people too. Even though they understand the importance of birth control, they're still bogged down in ideas from the old society. They're afraid of not having enough children. In the past, young people got married at 21 or 22. Nowadays, we encourage them to get married later. They marry at about 26 or 25. The old people think that the sooner their children marry, the sooner their grandchildren will help support the family. Anyone who thinks like that is in a hurry to get married. But young people should take advantage of their freedom to study and contribute to the great revolutionary movement. Marriage and children are a heavy burden, so we need to promote the concepts of birth control and late marriage. How many children do each of you have? I don't have any. I have 3. 3. I have 4. I have 4 too. I'm older. When family planning began in '64, I already had 4 children. And don't you want any children? Not now. Maybe in a year or 2. What kind of work do you do? I'm a doctor. I work in the fishing net factory. So do I. I'm an accountant in the shipyard.
Setting up an easel beside the sea like this is quite a revolution in Chinese painting. Before, Chinese artists got their inspiration from the work of other painters, instead of using the outside world as a model. There are professional artists like this one who have begun to paint reality. But today, workers and peasants are becoming artists too, painting the story of their lives in their new world. There is even one commune with 600 peasant painters. This is the season when algae is harvested. Even the village school has its own algae field. This teacher and his students do all the planting and harvesting together. The sale of the algae pays for all their school supplies. This is edible algae. It is salted and dried and then shipped all over the country. The algae is eaten as a vegetable and is also used in making certain medicines. Large-scale cultivation of algae began in 1966. The algae is grown from plankton on ropes. which are strung underwater between wooden stakes about 3 or 4 miles from the coast.
The base of the 337th Artillery Regiment, 179th Division, Nanking Military Region. We lived in a room like this one for several weeks. This way, we observe the daily activities of a company. Right now, it's 5:30 a.m. Once a week, the squad leaders and the officers have a meeting.
If someone would like to start, we can begin. I'll start. One of our squad members dropped a piece of bread on the ground, so he fed it to the pigs. The instructor saw it happen, but instead of talking to the men privately, he criticized him in front of the whole company at the General Assembly. I think the criticism was right, but the way he did it was wrong. You have to find the best way to make each criticism. Comrade, you say that the instructor didn't deal with it properly. I say we must criticize all faults, no matter how. I think we should take the way we criticize into account. I don't agree with you. We must criticize each mistake. We should have high standards in the Army. Exactly. We should have high standards in the way we criticize, too. I believe that we should make our criticisms carefully, with the right approach. And we have to be aware of what effect the criticisms have. The purpose of criticism is to educate. If we want to educate, then we have to use the right approach. I've really learned a lot from this. Any other comments? So, is the meeting over? That's it then.
Being in the Army is a privilege in China. Although anyone over the age of 18 is eligible, not everyone who wants to can join. Perhaps the most important requirement is strength of character, honesty, for example. Class background is important too. The son of a worker or peasant has the best chance. Although almost all young people would like to join, only 1 out of 15 will be chosen.
He's the company commander. I'm an instructor. He's second in command. He's a courier, secretary, bugler, and he's also a courier. Why don't you wear officer's stripes? Wearing stripes sets officers apart from soldiers. Not wearing stripes brings us together. When were they abolished? In 1965. We try to supply all our own needs. You see these vegetables? We grew them ourselves. And the meat comes from the animals we raise. This morning, I went to the meeting of the officers and the squad leaders. I explained all the criticisms you'd made about the commander and the other company officers. They agreed with all your comments and made their own self-criticisms. During the meeting, we had different ideas on certain issues. For example, about the wasted bread.
Some people said that the political instructor used the wrong approach by criticizing the man in front of the whole company. Other people thought he used the right approach. We discussed the problem and worked it out according to the principle that one is divided into two, that the person and the act are separable. This means that the criticism must be aimed at the wrong that was done, and not the person who did it. If you have any other comments to make, or questions to ask, go right ahead. Our discussion will improve the work we're doing in this company, and will help the nation. No, that's it. All our comments have already been reported by the squad leader. Squad number 8 has criticized me, for some very good reasons. About the bread. I didn't know enough about the situation. Not enough. So, I took it a little lightly. Perhaps a little too lightly. Too lightly. I'm glad you brought this up. I think that's good. Very good.
One of the Army's most important jobs is training the militia. In both the countryside and the city, many millions of men and women participate in militia training programs. The Army itself is much smaller. It organizes large strategic operations, whereas the militia is responsible for local defense. The militia is a real armed force, trained in the handling of heavy weapons. Mao Zedong said in 1938, "The army must be one with the people, so that they see it as their own army. That kind of army is invincible." To be one with the people, that is still the goal and rule of the army. It is the opposite of the traditional army, an army that is isolated, arrogant, parasitic. The Chinese soldiers helped the people and learned from them as well. During the Communist Revolution, it was mostly peasants who fought in the Red Army. Soldiers and peasants continued to work together, side by side. Their destinies and that of the revolution are closely linked.
Sometimes the workers from the generator factory in Shanghai organize a kind of celebration for themselves and their children. The main attraction is a foot race through the factory grounds.
How do you establish production standards? We used to use a stopwatch like this to calculate the time needed to make each part. We thought this was a scientific method. For example, if you started working on a part, I'd take out my stopwatch and start it, then put it back in my pocket. Later on, I'd check the watch to see how much work time it took to finish. I'd verify the actual work time. We've done away with these methods. The production schedule used to be decided by a small minority. Now the workers set it up themselves. They have a higher level of consciousness. The new standards are set by a 3-in-1 group of cadres, workers, and technicians. The group sets up the new standards, paying special attention to the workers' initiative. Now we use 3-in-1 groups of cadres, technicians, and workers who meet to discuss the standards. Before, there were jobs we couldn't finish on time. Now, with our new standards, our production has increased.
The workers are organized in groups of 12. Each person, besides his regular job, takes on other responsibilities for things like health, safety, or bookkeeping. This keeps the office staff to a minimum. In these same groups, people discuss the political side of everything, from national issues to everyday life.
I think the question is, should factories use the bonus system at this stage? If we raise this question in the context of socialism, I think we must differentiate between a cash stimulation and a reward system. I think the reward system is really necessary. We must not confuse it with the system of cash stimulation advocated by Liu Shaoqi. The reward system only benefits those who really deserve it. I say we need the reward system. At this stage of socialism, advanced workers who make significant contributions should be rewarded. The reward system is necessary. I don't agree with her. She says the reward system is only for those who've made significant contributions. If that's true, then it concerns very few workers. If we have to establish a system, let's not create one for just a few. Xiaozhou says there is a difference between the reward and the cash stimulation systems. I say they're the same. Why? Because the reward system will never liberate our productive energies. Only the revolution can. It has nothing to do with Liu Shaoqi's cash stimulation. I think some material incentives are still needed. In the socialist system, we distribute in proportion to work. To each according to his work. If you do a lot of work, and your level of consciousness is high, you have a right to an appropriate material reward.
The factory has its own classrooms. Night courses are given at 7 in the evening after an early dinner. Nearly 2,000 workers attend them regularly.
I'd like to understand why you study 19th century philosophy. You mean the study of Engels' Anti-Düring. The Anti-Düring is one of the most important classical works of Marxism-Leninism. Although it was written in relation to a particular struggle between Marxism and opportunism in the 19th century, it's still valid. We study the Anti-Düring today to help us understand the meaning of materialism and of idealism. An impulsive reaction is very similar to a false intuitive thought. What is an impulsive reaction? What does intuitive thought mean? In the third chapter, Engels concentrated on denouncing and condemning Düring's a priorism. Düring taught and defended a priorism, claiming that principles exist prior to objects. Düring maintains that thought is a framework. According to him, The unity of one's thought creates the unity of being.
First they study in small groups. Then all the groups meet together in a general assembly to present and discuss their work. These workers come from families that were illiterate just 30 years ago. Today they have begun to reflect on philosophical issues which are considered too important to be left in the hands of a few specialists. Mao Zedong says, philosophy must liberate itself from the lecture halls. It must enter into each person's life.
I took a course on Engels' brilliant work, The Anti-Düring. I've understood the dialectical materialist theory on reflection, the concept of idealistic a priorism, metaphysics, and how to judge which political position is correct. We must criticize the absurd and reactionary ideas of impostors like Düring and Liu Shaoqi, their theories on eternal truths and absolute authority. We are Marxists and dialectical materialists. We believe that the idea of absolute authority is false.
Comrades, we're about to go. We know that those who remain in the factory will keep up production while we're gone. We'll be eager to hear from them. Don't worry. We will make this march a success. We'll do our best to show our appreciation to all those who've helped out. We'll see you when we get back.
The peasants welcome them as they go through their villages. They work, talk, and live together.
Our long march has given us the opportunity of staying here with the peasants and hearing about their way of life. It wasn't like that before. In those days, we didn't dare say a thing. The reactionaries oppressed us, and we had no one we could go to. The Japanese invaded the area when I was 30. They burned the houses, took the men away, and raped the women. So we wandered around. We wandered, with no place to go. Today, thanks to Chairman Mao, we're happy. You, the workers, have come to the countryside to unite with us.
Shanghai is hosting an exhibit on the Paris Commune, an uprising of Parisian workers in 1871. And the old peasants have spoken to the factory workers about their past experiences. This is how the people increase their collective consciousness and transform their recent past into historical knowledge. Oppression has always relied on ignorance of the past. Today, the Chinese people want to rediscover their own history. They want to be masters of their own future.
The Cultural Revolution has shown that the principles of the Paris Commune are still relevant. We must follow these principles to make our revolution a success. During the Cultural Revolution, the ties between the leaders and the people were strengthened. The same thing took place in the Paris Commune. We believe that the principles of the Paris Commune still have practical value today. To avoid the creation of a privileged class, the Commune decided that the annual salary should not be more than 6,000 francs. This was to guarantee that all the workers and members of the Commune would remain equal. To run for office, candidates had to meet certain requirements. They got rid of opportunists, hustlers, and empty speech makers. They asked the electors to vote for those who were really ready to serve the people. During the Cultural Revolution, some cadres were criticized by the people. Why? They had been courageous. They had never been afraid of the enemy. They had dared to fight in the revolution. In those days, they were paid in kind. Now, they're paid a salary. And life in the cities is much easier. Anyway, we lost contact with the masses, and our revolutionary ardor had cooled down. That's why the people criticized us during the Cultural Revolution. Our main task is to struggle against the hidden attack of the bourgeoisie. We must fight against bourgeois ideas and against the concept of private property. Then we can keep hold of and extend the power of the working class.
To overthrow and then regain power, to revive a revolution that has lost its momentum. This was the meaning of the Cultural Revolution. The road to the future was made possible by those who marched in Peking.
Was it your group that had some problems with a teacher over a soccer ball? Yes. We were playing soccer. It was after 7 a.m. A teacher wanted us to stop. The ball was right in front of me, so I kicked it. And it grazed her head. Did it happen here? Yes, over there. The teacher took me to her office and criticized me. And she took the ball away. She took it away from everybody just to punish one person. So she confiscated the ball, is that it? Yes. She confiscated it. The ball wasn't aimed at her. I didn't do it on purpose. She pokes her nose into everything, even kicking a ball. She's always butting in. She'd already criticized me once over a problem with a cup. I haven't forgotten that. It explains the thing about the ball. You don't like her very much, do you? That's right. It happened 2 days ago. It was 7 a.m. when I arrived at the school. I saw the students playing soccer on the ball field. I said, the bell has rung. You have to stop your game. Most of them stopped, except for one tall boy. Instead of stopping, he kicked the ball hard. Whop! The ball almost hit my head. I was really angry. Don't you know you're not allowed to play after 7? Yes, he said. Then why did you keep on playing? Don't make a big deal out of it, he said to me. It wasn't you I kicked. I was furious. Comrades, we're holding this meeting to help Jia Yanming. He continued to play ball after the bell rang. He broke the rules, you know that, don't you? Yes. He played after the bell, and when the teacher asked him to stop, he kept on playing. So we've invited Mrs. Tong to this meeting. Please say whatever you think, all right? Jianming kicked the ball because he likes to play soccer. That's why he kicked it. It's no big deal. Then it was for love of the game, is that it? Yes. You really think that his love of the game forced him to kick the ball? What do you think, Jianming? When the ball's there, I kick it. No harm meant. We only have one ball, so when you can kick it... Do you really think that when you're involved in a game, you can't control your feet? No, love of the game has nothing to do with it. They broke the rules. If they want to play, they have to follow the rules. That's true. Since you can control your impulse to play on the street, you can also control your desire to play here. Just one thing. Comrade Wen Chuyen also loves soccer. It's his weak point, as we all know. But I think he can overcome it. We've tried to solve this problem before. At meetings, often he'd miss meetings to play soccer. Since then, he's changed, even more than we'd hoped. So I say that it is possible to overcome this weakness. Another thing, we can put a soccer ball anywhere we want. If we don't touch it, it doesn't move. If we kick it, it moves. It's obvious that a ball doesn't move by itself. I say that people are masters of their own acts, and that the player controls the ball. At first, you all said that he couldn't help kicking the ball. Then you started on the idea of love of the game. Even though we've tried to reason with you, you keep on defending the wrong idea. Why? Are you going to let us analyze Jianming's problem or not? Wait a minute. You're the one who asked us to speak out, and now you won't let us talk. The reason I said what I did was not to protect Jianming. We've paid a lot of attention to what the others have said. I hope you're willing to accept my way of learning. You're not being patient enough. You asked us to speak freely, so then we can also express ideas that are wrong. If you repress criticism, we can't speak freely. Xiaoqun has paid attention, so maybe his ideas have changed. Actually, there are two reasons why I kicked the ball. Love of the game was secondary. The main reason is a result of what happened in class the other day, when I forgot my cup. Mrs. Cao criticized me, and so did Mrs. Tong. She criticized me too. I was very upset about it. When Mrs. Tong told us to stop playing, the ball was right in front of me. Not to kick it meant losing my pride. So I kicked the ball out of spite. I've just come to understand that I shouldn't have rejected the teacher's criticisms. I just wanted to get back at them, and I was wrong. I'll take their advice and try to change. Jianming has spoken very well, hasn't he? The meeting's over.
One's first thought is of troops crossing the desert or of supplies being sent to the front. But the pipelines tell us we're in oil country. The month is September. This is one of the drilling crews belonging to an outpost far off in the northeast, the Great Northern Desert, as the Chinese call it. The territory is about the size of North Dakota.
We had a lot of trouble learning how to run it. We didn't know anything about drilling. It took a lot of effort on our part and help from the experienced workers. Do you like your work? Yes, we're proud of it. Do you sometimes think about social position, a good job, an easier life? Sometimes, yes. Sometimes we think about promotions and higher wages. Yes, we think about that a lot. We have to fight to get rid of these ideas. What did you do during the Cultural Revolution? I was only so big. I followed the grown-ups. I shouted the same slogans. And when they covered the walls with political posters, I carried the glue.
Many young people from all over the country come to work in Daching for 2 or 3 years and then leave. For all of China, Daching represents much more than oil. It serves as a model that young people can put into practice elsewhere. At oil headquarters, the workers, technicians, and cadres plan the next drilling sites.
Experience shows us the importance of economic independence. The oil problem seems economic, but it's really political. Oil has made us politically independent. When our country needed oil, the Soviet imperialists tried to humiliate and strangle us. So they decided to cut off our oil supplies and call back their technicians. The Soviets have a talent for deception. They pretend to offer economic aid, but there are always political strings attached. When we needed lubricants for the machinery, they didn't dare say no, but they put us in a critical situation. It was very bad. In the summer, they delivered oil for the winter, and in the winter, oil for the summer. That's right, oil for the summer. In the winter, it froze, and in the summer, it burned. The machinery was damaged because of the lubricants they gave us. Those Soviets planned it that way. You don't have any oil? Here's some, but one condition, be our satellite. Our living conditions were very hard too. So many people came to these barren, uninhabited plains that they had to live in shacks or in tents, even in caves. Yes, caves. We had a lot of problems. In 1960, the weather conditions were very bad, and food had to be rationed. No matter what your job was, both day and night, you had to give a lot of yourself in order to speed up the drilling and to help build socialism. The important things about our battle are its political nature and the spirit of our fighters. For 13 years, we've been producing oil to build our country and for the revolution. We also produce enough to export.
As in all conquests, Daching has its heroes. Mama Sue is known all over China.
I came to Daching in 1961. The Great Plains seemed to go on forever. I got the idea that the housewives could organize themselves to clear the land. So we went from door to door, asking who wants to take part in the work and who doesn't. If the women answered no, we'd have political discussions with them to get them to participate in clearing and farming the land. At first, 25 women signed up, but the day we planned to leave, only 5 showed up. As for the others, well, one had a child, another a sick relative. It was impossible to get them to come. And what could 5 of us do? I said, nobody's ever gone out there. Let's go and see for ourselves. The others can come later. There was nothing alive out there. Not a living thing. The grass came up to our waists. There wasn't even a path. As we walked along, we had to wade through the tall grass. Where could we camp? We set up a simple tent with stakes at the four corners. Once the tent was up, we dug a ditch and built a dirt wall around it. Yes, we built a dirt wall. As for the children, the mother said, "We've been running all afternoon. Now we're exhausted. There are wolves out here. If they come out at night, they might carry off our children." The tent didn't have a door, so at night we stuck our shovels in the ground to bar the entrance. While the others slept, I looked around outside every now and then. Nothing ever happened. The next day, we started shoveling. After having cleared an acre of land, General Headquarters sent news that they had mobilized some more women, and 18 more housewives arrived. That made 23 women in all, but it was late in the season, and shoveling went too slowly. We found a wooden plow and pulled it by hand. The work went faster that way. One of us guided the plow, and 9 others pulled it. The others continued shoveling. Pulling the plow that way was exhausting. Before we'd cross the field, our legs would buckle under us, and we'd fall on our knees. In 1962, we harvested over 3,000 pounds of soybeans and more than 40,000 pounds of vegetables. We only had 5 shovels to work with. In 1963, there were more of us, and we were able to farm more land. Little by little, our village is growing. That's the story of our village. I'm finished. I wanted to ask her, is she proud of what she's done? Of her success? Is she proud of the way she organized the other women? I worked according to Chairman Mao's teachings. I still have a ways to go. I'm far from being satisfied.
When Daqing started out, there were lots of workers and their families, and not much housing. So there was this contradiction between a lot of people and very little housing. How could we solve this problem? If we only counted on the men, the construction would have been too slow. To deal with the situation as fast as possible, we decided to take things into our own hands. But there were prejudices to overcome from the men and also from some of the women. They thought that even though we were able to do farm work, we still wouldn't be able to do construction work. Old prejudices, yes, ideas from the old society haven't completely disappeared. Some people still think that way. For example, that women aren't able to build houses, that they should take care of the children and the cooking, that they shouldn't worry about anything else. These ideas still exist. They haven't completely disappeared. Men have 2 hands to contribute to the socialist revolution. Well, so do we. We can do as much. We must carry on the revolution like the men.
The mail services, the seamstresses, the traveling markets, all of Daqing supports the drillers out in the oil fields. There are 2 different kinds of pioneers and 2 different legends. One is the lone cowboy from the American Far West, who has to rely on his own fast reflexes to survive. The other is the oil driller from Daqing, a worker who belongs to a socialist society. His strength is that of the entire group. Daqing holds a celebration in its own honor. an ancient custom to parade those who are to be honored on horseback. They're not celebrating the achievements of technology, but rather the spirit of Dacheng. These socialist pioneers, the heroes, all 3,600 of them, are not workers who have produced the most or stood at their machines the longest. They are being honored because they represent the power of a revolutionary people.
Cadres and fellow workers, after I finished high school, I answered Chairman Mao's call to young people to unite with the workers, peasants, and soldiers. The party committee and the cadres of Dacheng are helping us in our political studies. They are also patiently teaching us the necessary skills. In this way, we've learned things that we couldn't have learned in books or in the classroom. We must have a special concern for the crews that work in the most distant oil fields. We must help them with the problems of daily life. The harder they struggle, the more we must worry about their well-being, to keep up their revolutionary spirit. We must unite to win even greater victories. Follow the example of the man of iron. Follow the example of Da Chai.
Singing and dancing to tell the story of their lives and struggles is a popular Chinese tradition. Since the 1930s and the Revolutionary War, the communists have followed this tradition.
The red flags of Daqing are waving in the wind. Listen to the victorious song of the battle for oil. We offer the fruits of our victory to the party. Continue to criticize revisionism and to study Marx, Lenin, and Chairman Mao. We overflow with enthusiasm for our work.
Shanghai. In Chinese, the name means above the sea. Shanghai was a small fishing town until the middle of the 19th century, when European invaders seeking wealth, power, and the mysteries of Asia came from across the seas. The foreigners made of it the city of their fantasies. For them, Shanghai was a city of glamorous spies, lavish brothels, and opium dens. Above all, it was the gateway to illicit profit and enormous wealth. Today, Shanghai is once again a Chinese city. This boulevard is in the former British concession. In those days, a sign used to read, "No Chinese or dogs allowed." Photography has only recently become popular. Everywhere you look, someone is posing for a shot. All the commotion is over a Westerner who is having his picture taken. In a neighborhood once reserved exclusively for foreigners, today it's the foreigner who draws a crowd, especially if his hair is a little long.
Have you been working here for a long time? Yes, for quite a while. About 30 years. Now you sell candy and cakes. What kind of shop was this before? It was the same. Candy, cakes, pies. The shop next door belonged to a Frenchman. This one was owned by a Chinese. And now the two shops have been made into one? It's been one shop since the transformation of private enterprise. This used to be part of the French concession, didn't it? Yes, that's right. It was a kind of red light district for the capitalists who indulged in all kinds of corrupt pleasures. But workers almost never came here. The regulars were the capitalists, the bosses.
All prices are based on the pound. 90 fens is equal to 45 cents a pound. The average salary is about 65 yuan a month, or $30. Food costs 10 to 12 yuan per person per month. Rent usually comes to less than 5% of the family income. Other services, including medical care, are practically free, and there are no taxes. $50 fens, that's about 20 cents for a cauliflower. Meat, fish, vegetables, and cakes are all readily available. Since the 1960s, when a series of droughts and floods ruined the crops, cotton, oil, and rice have been rationed. But now even these items are plentiful. Rationing has become more a question of preventing waste than scarcity of supply. All businesses, even these small shops, are government-owned and operated. They are under the jurisdiction of the Shanghai city government. Barber shops and beauty parlors are run this way too. Everyone who works here gets a salary. When the shop shows a profit, part goes to the city, and the rest is used to make improvements. The launching of a ship is a political happening. Up until the Cultural Revolution, China depended on other countries for its commercial fleet. In this realm, as well as in all others, China has been aiming at self-sufficiency. Shanghai, for a long time the symbol of colonization in Asia, is today a revolutionary stronghold. The Chinese say, the east wind prevails over the west wind. The revolutionary wind prevails over the reactionary wind. And they've named this boat the Wind and the Waves. Professor Chen lives on the Tsinghua University campus in Peking. Professor Chen is a member of the small group of elite Chinese intellectuals trained abroad. He studied in Canada and then in the United States during the late 1930s. In 1946, he returned to China. Today, as a renowned professor of physics, he's what the Chinese call a great scholar.
In the old days, a pen, a piece of paper, and a book were his entire life. He wasn't interested in anything else. When Papa used to come home, he didn't look at anything except his books. In those days, I believe the American and Soviet educational systems should be our models. So I thought the best thing for our university was to imitate the most famous American and Russian universities. The main characteristic of these universities is that the professors have all the power. I did all the talking in my classes. I talked, but no one got much out of it. Although I only taught science courses, even my scientific explanations were biased by my worldview. For example, I always placed the most emphasis on theory. I insisted upon theory because I thought concrete applications were not very important. And since I didn't stress the practical side of things, my students looked down on the real world. I told them, just learn what I'm teaching you, and I guarantee you your theses will be good. Their only goal was to write a thesis. But the people, because of Mao Zedong, studying Mao Zedong's thought had raised their consciousness. So they thought I was really difficult to deal with. And the whole university called me the hopeless case. Not to my face, of course, but behind my back they all said it. In the Cultural Revolution, there was a real explosion against me. From the first day, the walls outside were covered with political posters. As soon as I opened the door, that's all I saw. They criticized what I'd said to a given student on such and such a day in such and such a class. These disagreements were inevitable. Then the Red Guards came to the house, saying, "We'd like to see if you have any reactionary books." They saw that I did have many books, including foreign books, scientific books, and books on mathematics. They didn't think these books were reactionary, but they asked me, in what way do these books contribute to the economic and scientific development of our country? And since clearly they didn't contribute to it directly, the Red Guards said that they weren't really necessary, although for me they were all treasures. So we had different ideas on this, but they were nice about it. They didn't insist at all that my books were useless and should be thrown away. They just asked me to think about it, about how many of these books met the needs of the working class. I thought about this question a lot. It made a profound impact on me. We agreed completely with the Red Guards. They pushed him to change his thinking. Shortly afterwards, Chairman Mao called on intellectuals to take part in the life of the ordinary workers, to educate ourselves through manual work. I wanted to go to work in a factory, because that's where the workers are. So I asked to go. The university organized a group of professors who wanted to work in a factory and learn from the workers. My application was accepted. In the old days, I wrote a lot of articles, and several books too. It was signing my name that motivated me to continue writing. Each one of my publications glorified my name. On the other hand, workers never think of signing their names to the things they make. There used to be great differences in our thinking. For example, my husband was angry with our son for having discontinued his studies. But the girls and I supported him. My scientific theories were highly respected. I ignored all other ideas. I was very arrogant. But it was at the factory that I realized that all my theories didn't amount to much. I saw there were things that I didn't know, because I'd never learned them. But that's when I discovered that I didn't even know things in my own field. things I'd studied and taught my students. Well, I hadn't even learned these things very well. For example, one day at the factory, I went on my own to get a piece of steel, a high carbon steel, a type that contains a high percentage of carbon, which makes a very strong steel. I'd never gone by myself to get the metal. I'd always sent one of my assistants down to get it. But this time, I didn't have an assistant, so I went myself. And I didn't have a machine to test the materials. All the bars of metal looked identical, despite the different grades of carbon. They were all dark gray. What was I going to do? What a problem. I stood around looking at the bars until a nearby worker asked what the problem was. So I explained my predicament to him. And he said, "I'll find it for you." He hit the bars with a stick, and by listening to the sound, he found the metal I needed. I was very embarrassed. He said, "Don't be embarrassed. What just happened is an example of the split between theory and practice. You've had this problem without ever realizing it. We knew you had it, and today you've learned it for yourself. It's not all that bad." The Cultural Revolution has set intellectuals like me free. I'm no longer imprisoned by my books. I didn't throw them out, of course. Look for yourselves. They're all still here. And I think my work has improved. That's why I say I'm liberated. It's just one change in my transformation. I've also gotten away from the narrow pursuits of fame and self-interest.
This drugstore, called Drugstore Number 3, is in a very busy neighborhood in the southern part of the city. It has 24 employees and serves about 1,000 people a day. We were there every day for 8 weeks. Medical care and medicine is free for the working people. Everything is paid for by their company. Those who don't work have the same rights by paying 1 yuan annually. With a prescription, one pays absolutely nothing. Without a prescription, one pays. Drugstore Number 3 has transformed one of its rooms into a dispensary. About 100 people come to consult every day, especially for minor problems. This medical center is convenient for both neighborhood people and transients.
Have a seat. Up until the Cultural Revolution, medical care and medical products were two separate worlds. The drugstore only sold medicine. If you're sick, go to the hospital. That wasn't practical. People didn't agree. Since the Cultural Revolution, we've criticized the profit motive. And we've asked ourselves, for whom are we really working? That's a fundamental question, a matter of principle. And also one which makes us take sides. If you're only interested in profits, and your zeal increases along with your rising sales, you're on the way to serving the bourgeoisie. That's what we call putting profits at the helm. In my case, I was influenced by Liu Shaoqi before the Cultural Revolution. That was when our drugstore preferred to deal only with big orders. We used to encourage the consumption of expensive medicines and stimulants. We were always eager to handle the big deals. Small business had no interest for us. Do you get a bonus as well as your salary? Bonuses no longer exist today. They no longer exist.
The drugstore employees have meetings once a week.
If we stock up on oxygen tanks, how many will we sell in a year? Not even one, perhaps. So what's the point? But we only have one to rent. We have to keep people's needs in mind. We shouldn't think only in terms of money. That's true, and it costs almost as much to rent the tank as to buy one. And then there could be an emergency where we need an oxygen tank. It's not as though we were selling perfume or wool, especially since we often need it at night. Just imagine somebody with high fever during the night. He chokes, suffocates. He needs oxygen. It's a special need, don't you think? If the patient chokes, by the time we get there, he's no longer breathing. That's why we need a few tanks on hand.
The drugstore has set up a worker peasant control committee. 3 neighboring factories, including this pharmaceutical company, send their elected representatives. The neighborhood also sends a delegate. This kind of joint control between customers and employees is still unusual. It is still an experiment. The village to which the drugstore is linked also sends a representative to the control committee.
I'm going to drugstore number 3 tomorrow. If you've anything to tell them. I bought a cream there the other day for my mycosis. It didn't work very well. Ask them if they have anything better. Tell them it's for me, all right? And then for acupuncture, Dr. Tsai came by a few days ago. He's really very good. But now there are also the young doctors. And they're not very good at acupuncture. You can feel them hesitating. So what I'd like is that these 2 apprentices learn their profession better. That's all. I'll leave it to you. Did you come by bus? I took the number 50. It was packed. You see, we work very hard in the country, especially during the planting season. Our village isn't very far from the city, but to go back and forth, it takes 1 or 2 hours. Today, our worker comrades have made several very important observations. After the meeting, we should make some decisions. As for the future, I'll speak to the rest of the comrades at the drugstore about it. Don't neglect your studies, even if you have a lot of work. Fine. Anything else to say? The meeting's adjourned. Say, could you deliver these medicines? These go to Yongja Street, and those to Jiangguo Street. And then tonight, you'll have to go to Gaon Street for Mrs. Lee's acupuncture treatment. Tonight, yes, to Mrs. Lee's. To Mrs. Lee's. Yes, Gaon Street. Gaon Street. Here, these two are for you. Poor Xiaohong, I completely forgot your candy. But you don't mind, do you? Here it is. Give one to Xiaowang. Go on, give him one or I won't buy you one next time. Go on, give it to him.
The young woman is Gao Shulan. We've often had dinner with her in this room. This is her brother's house. During the week, she lives here because the factory where she works is nearby. On Saturdays, Gao Shulan goes home to Peking, where her husband lives.
Forget the candy. Come on now. Let's sing. Go ahead, sing. Ready, go. You have 2 children. That's enough. It's nice to have a boy and a girl. Xiaodan, do you want a baby brother? Tell her no. I agree, but my Xiaohong asks me for a little brother every day. She probably gets it from Grandma. At the factory, a lot of women have 3 or 4 children. That's bad for their health, and sometimes for work too. It's practically empty. Here? Yes, here's fine. Sometimes I bring candy for Xiaohong. Do you bring her some every time? No, but this time my mother-in-law is sick. They have to stay indoors, so I'm bringing her some.
What are you doing? Don't you have school? No, we don't have school. We're following Lei Feng's example. We're cleaning up. Was it your idea to come here? Yes, we volunteered. Our teacher and classmates told us that other schools have already come here. Our classmates told us how to go about it. So we formed a group, and here we are. Do you do this often? Yes, a lot. After school.
Gao Shulan's husband. Like Gao Shulan, he comes from a peasant family. He's an officer in the Peking garrison, but he has to travel frequently. Gao Shulan says, I'm very talkative, but he's rather quiet. This is a replica of a huge suspension bridge called the Tattoo Bridge. During the Long March, the Red Army had to cross it, clinging to the chains and fighting at the same time. This is the most famous episode of the Long March.
Comment tu organises ton travail avec la vie de famille?
How do you manage having a family and working at the same time? The family is very important to me. But it's not the most important thing. You can't let it take up all your time when you have to work and study too. We manage pretty well, since my husband works near home. He can take care of our child part of the time. My mother-in-law treats me well and helps me in what I'm doing. Since I work far away, I only come home once a week. What qualities did you look for most in choosing your husband? Before getting married, I tried to picture the kind of man I would like. After thinking about it a lot, I decided he would have to be honest, politically sound, and have the same outlook on life as me, so we wouldn't argue later on. Perhaps there are still some women who believe they have to get married in order to have food and clothing. We fell in love in February '66. For 2 years, we were really a strange pair. We only went out to eat once. Neither of us wanted the other to pay. I was always thinking, it shouldn't come from his pocket. Whether or not our relationship developed, I didn't want to owe him anything. That's how it was for me, and many other women too. Did you think about marriage a lot when you were a girl? No, I didn't. I got married at 25. No one forced me. I got married because I wanted to. It was during the Cultural Revolution. I took part in the Cultural Revolution with the women in my factory. With all that was going on, I didn't think much about my marriage. A little, of course, given my age. But not as much as I thought about all that was happening at the time. Do you ever disagree with your husband? We rarely argue, except sometimes about our child, who's rather naughty. Sometimes I lose my temper and even spank her. Not hard, of course, but my husband disapproves. He believes in reasoning. He doesn't like me to spank her. Do you want another child? Yes, another. That's all you think about. Another one. Then you'll take care of it. Sure I will. Then I'll think about it.
The locomotive factory where Gao Shulan works is called the February 7th factory. On February 7th, 1923, the Chinese railroad workers went on strike for the first time. 60 of them were killed and 300 wounded. The diesel engines manufactured in the factory are assembled in this workshop. A repair shop for old locomotives. The union organizes evening courses for the factory workers.
What courses do you think we should have? Technical skills, I think. The older workers are already quite skilled. Technical courses would be better for the younger ones. What about the older ones then? Arts and sciences? Arts and sciences, that's a good idea. I always make an investigation first, otherwise I'd be criticized.
When we came here before, we spent some time at the factory. The factory was still in the midst of the Cultural Revolution. That's when we met Gao Shulan. At that time, she was in charge of a shop almost entirely composed of men, which caused many problems. Gao Shulan took us to a courtyard, introduced us to her family, and we became friends. Today, Gao Shulan is vice chairman of the Factory Workers Union.
In the North Wing, they make up their own menu. Oh, that's pretty good.
Children can eat with their parents at the canteen. The nursery is just next door. There are also elementary and high schools on the factory grounds. Altogether, 5,000 children.
Gao Shulan is an outstanding woman. She spoke out during the Cultural Revolution when no other women dared. She fought against the wrong political line. Not only that, but her class position is very solid. She stood up to the leaders who were following the capitalist path. At that time, Gao Shulan was really determined to fight. Class enemies, motivated by hate and fear, were trying to turn the people against each other, to crush the revolution. One time, during a big meeting, Gao Shulan was on the speaker's platform, attacking these leaders. A big fight broke out. People had been deceived by their leaders. Fists were flying, but as if nothing were happening. She continued explaining Chairman Mao's 16 points. You have to have been through a struggle with her to really know her. She was right there with us, with you and me. We were all together in the same group. We were all together during the Cultural Revolution. In the beginning, she was just like us, an ordinary militant. Yes, a woman like us. She held her ground, even when threatened. We respected her. And then there was the terrible raid, the night of January 12th. They tried 3 times to get their hands on Gao Shulan. Wasn't that November 11th, 1966? Then they brought the rebels to the factory. They beat them and made them kneel on benches. The factory was under heavy guard. It lasted more than 6 hours. The way she stood up to the enemy showed us how strong she was in her class position and in her convictions. And that's when we chose her as leader, right? We admired the way she kept on struggling. Everyone in the whole factory knew her. That's right. At times like that, you know who the real leaders are. In the midst of a struggle. Not only that, during the Cultural Revolution, when things were really hard, she fell in love. But she didn't even have time to write a letter. She worked even on Sundays. She really threw herself into the revolution. We admire her a lot. She's quite a woman. A man could have done as much as she did. But in a sense, being a woman and having done all that makes her even stronger than us, so we were glad to vote for her. Even if a new cadre is a hard worker, it takes time to learn the job. Sometimes we're not satisfied, right? With her work. You mean her methods? Right. For the last few days, I've been watching you shoot your film. I'm all for it. It's a good thing. But the rest of us, the workers, would like to warn Gao not to become too pretentious and proud. I'm sure you'll agree that doing this film about her, making her a star, you have to be careful, don't you think? She should work with us in the shop more often, otherwise she may fall into revisionism. So if comrades Marcelina and Evans could film some other women. In the March 8th group, Comrade Chang Wan is outstanding. And Shui Zhou Lam, for example, she's a very good cadre. What sort of work do you do? We repair the machines. Our shop is in charge of maintenance. It has 353 workers. 83 are women. That's about 25% women. We're all fitters. Before, we could only watch the men work the machines. Some of them said, it's better to have one man working than two women. It's more profitable. They also said, long on hair, short on brains. All women can do is talk. Just after our March 8th group started out, we went into a shop to fix a broken lathe. When they saw we were all women, the men were annoyed. They wouldn't let us touch the machine. They said, it's not worth repairing. Take my case. I've been working here for 17 years. But I had to wait for the Cultural Revolution before I could play an active role in socialism. Do any of you have children? Yes. I have one child. I have one. I have three. The eldest is 15. She's in high school. You say women can do the same work as men. Do you think that's true the other way around? When my husband comes home, he takes care of everything. He does the laundry and cooks dinner. Our parents were shocked at first. They were offended. But when we explained, they understood. My father is 80. For him, housework has always been a job for women, not for his son-in-law. Some people say husbands who do housework are just like women. Sometimes my husband even washes my hair on Sundays. But at the nursery, it's still the women who take care of children. How did you become vice chairman of the union? As I recall, the union committee had submitted a list of 29 candidates. They printed it and handed it out to everyone. The workers said there weren't enough young candidates, so they made up a second list of their own, with 31 names. This list was sent around, but the workers weren't satisfied yet. They said it was time for women to become cadres, and there weren't enough women on the list. In the end, they drew up a list of 37 candidates. How does your salary compare to a worker's? I don't have a very high salary, 47 yuan, like a grade 3 worker. When we filmed you at the factory, some workers said they thought we were paying too much attention to you. What do you think? Yes, I know. A lot of my friends and comrades have told me, Comrade Gao, the film is concentrating on you. That's fine. But don't let it go to your head. Don't cut yourself off from the workers. When the filming is over, we hope you'll come and work with us more often.
The Cultural Revolution practically eliminated the union. The workers accused union leaders of working too much for the management. The leaders decided which job each worker would do, assigned the shops, and gave out individual bonuses. They spoke only about increasing production, and not in terms of class struggle and politics. As early as 1958, Mao Zedong had criticized these tendencies, but most union leaders paid no attention. Now, a new union is being created. It has 3 tasks: political education, technical training, and improvement of living and working conditions for everyone. order to combat the division between intellectual and manual work, between engineers and workers, technological innovation has become a mass movement. It's one of the great achievements of the Cultural Revolution. The housewives and retired workers of the neighborhood have organized a sort of recycling shop in the factory. They own the shop collectively. They salvage oil and cotton from pads attached to freight car axles. Coal dust mixed with water makes a kind of mud. This mud is dried and made into briquettes for cooking and heating.
You bought another pair of pants? Why not? I only have one. I only have one. What's done is done. I only have one granddaughter. Let's see. She's bought some more pants. Now your brother will want some too. That's right. And a new jacket too. Your sister works. You don't. So what? What's the difference? All you two care about is your own personal comfort. You say, things are better now. Can't young people dress better too? But you mustn't forget the past. Our parents were poor peasants. And you, after a month's work, you bought yourself a shawl and leather shoes. Your aunt, after 10 years of work, doesn't have as much. All you young people think about is good food and fancy clothes. That's not good. You mustn't forget the people who are suffering throughout the world. Don't you think so? You never listened to your father. Things can't go on like this. What's done is done. But watch out in the future. I don't mind if you wear them now, but remember the hardships of the past. All right, go help your mother with dinner. Anyway, in my day, you couldn't find such fine cloth.
好，好，你这。走不了，
走不了，
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 不行那个。出来。
往哪儿行？走不了。你那往你敢下吗？
你管
我给你俩，你敢？
他俩什么？俩劲儿。
什么？再下一个。
还两个，还你管他。亮给你了。
说。
亮给你了，要不要？要不要？不要。要不要？白柚子，要不要？
走了。
一个什么？
走了。
来。你说，
有个小点声怎么样？
你说
这么大声嚷干嘛你们？啊？
完了。哎，走，你这他。